Wilson.
I'm Chris Emke.
And this is Diesel Performance Podcast. Today we are recording from the seats of our 2017 PowerStroke shop truck here.
Yeah. Now, we've had the truck on the show before. We've done a ride-along just talking about Ford and Ford tuning and stuff like that. But Paul, we wanted to get this truck out on the road because over at Calibrated Power, we have a newly released product that I feel like is starting to gain some legs. So we wanted to get some in-cab shots and kind of a overview or review of our new-to-the-market Stealth 67 G2 turbocharger for the 15 plus 6.7 PowerStroke.
Man, this has been a turbo that's actually been in R&D on and off for a long time. It's something they worked on, God, way back in the day.
Yep.
When they, I think, originally were looking at doing like the 11 to 14 upgrades.
Right.
As they drill further and further into the R&D process, they found out actually what we have and what we've designed is a perfect drop-in for your 15 to 19s. So we want to come out with a turbo that's going to be really quick to spool up, have awesome drivability, and of course, the biggest piece here is still have plenty of top-end performance.
I think, from our early years of R&D, because we've been playing around with these since about 16, 17, investigating these turbos. And it's not that we abandoned the project, but we did kind of put it to the wayside. We had some other projects that we were working on. And in the time of those projects, a lot of technology did advance.
That's right.
And we were able to kind of recircle back into this project and say, okay, how could we be better than we were before and still maintain what we consider to be the main benefits of the Stealth-esque lineup, like you mentioned, drivability, spool up, that 100% clean, simple install.
Love that.
And we've been getting some traction on some of the earlier stuff. So like our 6-liter 67 G2 turbos, those have been becoming a lot more popular. Guys are really happy with what those turbochargers offer, from a simple stock bolt-on truck all the way up to the higher modified trucks. So this is a really nice transition into that product catalog.
That's right. That's right. Now this truck itself actually went to King of the Streets last year out in Ohio.
Yep.
Last year out in Ohio. It kicked ass. Granted, it only competed against one other truck, but I think what was really important to understand out of that competition, that included dirt drags, drag racing, sled pulling, driving on the street, dyno run. I think that's it. I think that was all of the segments of their competition. Is that it really proved that it is a great all-around turbo, especially considering we drove the truck out there. We didn't trailer it in. We actually hooked up an enclosed trailer, our big enclosed trailer you guys may have saw out at UCC. And Nick drove it with his son from Illinois to Ohio. So a good 8-9 hour drive with it. He got back and said, it tows great. I unhooked it from the trailer. I competed with it. I hooked it back up to a trailer and I drove it home. And that's not something that we always get out of larger drop-in turbos. Sometimes when you get into a larger drop-in turbo, you can have issues with building EGTs and not really being able to maintain that low-speed, high-load performance. This one handled it great. It kind of seemed to be that perfect transition of it. It performed well in all the places a stock turbo performs well, which stock turbos usually perform pretty well in high-load, low-speed.
Right.
But it did better than stock in that situation. And then, of course, up top, like we said, it was capable. I mean, the dyno out there gave us a really big number. I believe the number we're advertising with this is capable of up to 700 horsepower if you're in a highly modified truck.
What I think is really unique about this specific truck and this specific setup is this is not only just a run-of-the-mill truck with run-of-the-mill upgrades, but it packs a really hardcore punch in the sense of, in the era, in the world where we are talking about what can or cannot be modified, here is a truck that is street legal, okay, that does make really good turnkey power. And we were able to show and prove that running the truck through its paces at the King of the Streets and showing the versatility of the truck and the truck setup. Aside from the 67 Stealth Turbo, we have a 10mm CP4 pump from Extra G Performance, of course, tuning from Calibrated Power, Home and Duramax tuner, S&B intake, and a couple other little bolt-on goodies. And I'll tell you what, Paul, for a truck that makes almost 700 horsepower, it's quiet, right? It's emissions on truck, so you still get that nice refinement in the way the truck feels. No drone, no crazy loud rattles, sounds, anything like that.
I can hear the tires more than the exhaust or the engine.
But when you do get on it, just coming from that turn and you toe into the throttle, the truck's there. It's responsive. There's no lag. There's no delay. There's no popping. There's no banging. There's no there's nothing. It just goes. So it's really cool to see. A lot of times guys come from the older trucks into the newer trucks and they learn to like the quietness.
Yeah.
But they just don't like the delayed pedal, or they don't like the lack of power that their old truck once had. And this really just brings it all together.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said I'm a huge fan of regular cabs. Like they feel lighter, they feel quicker. They are lighter. They generally are a little bit quicker. But what's nice about this one is that versatility, right? Is like you can still hook up and tow with it. We got the WC Fab traction bars on here, so we're not getting any axle wrap when we're hooked up to a trailer, high load scenarios. You have the Easy Link tuning with the emissions equipped tuning on it. It's like Chris said, that's going to make it snappier. That's going to make it more responsive. Now, sometimes what we've seen is there are turbo options out there. Like if you were to throw an S400 on it and delete it, even with the best tuning out there, you're gonna have a real laggy pig. You just are. It's gonna be doggy underneath, and then all that power is gonna come up at once. That's fun to drive when you're a kid.
One of the things that I find are really unique is, like you mentioned, Paul, S400, the truck is really delayed and then it comes on really hard. There's a lot of drop-in turbochargers that you do lose a little bit of low-end response depending on the size of the turbo. Where I think a lot of the common misperception comes in is you can assume that a 64 millimeter turbo spools faster than a 66 or a 67. So, it's that it's the proper balance, I think, is what you really want to get at, and that's really where our 67 G2 line really shines.
That's it.
Is we want to be able to get a turbocharger that's going to perform to the best of its ability, make all this great power, but we don't want to sacrifice that low-end response. We want to be able to tow with the truck. We want the turbo to be literally as versatile as possible.
And I think matching is the perfect phrase there, Chris. I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because one of the things that our R&D department has really excelled at with the 67 G2 line, and especially on this PowerStroke turbo, is that they've matched the compressor wheel and the map of the compressor wheel to the performance and the abilities of the turbine wheel. And that's where we're going to get that lightning quick spool
response.
up. That's where we're going to get the responsiveness. And that's going to, like, you kind of think of a turbine wheel as like the engine that drives your turbo.
Exactly.
Is that as the exhaust energy passes over that turbine, the shape of the fins, the size of the wheel, the thickness of the blade, all these things play into a factor to the turbo and to the sound, which was something that I thought was pretty interesting. I never realized how much of the sound from a turbo actually comes from the turbine side.
Exactly.
I think a lot of us just always expected, like you had mentioned, bigger compressor wheel, more sound.
More power.
Bigger compressor wheel, more power. That's not entirely true.
No. What I think you find a lot of is guys will put, like you said, the bigger compressor and not necessarily pay too much attention to the turbine, and you don't have those two wheels in sync and working correctly. So you'll get that turbine in the motion, but given that RPM where the turbine spinning is happy, the compressor wheel isn't necessarily as happy. So it's all about balance at the end of the day. And I think talking into the new era of trucks, I mean, granted, this truck is now 5 years old, but it's still such a new truck. It's the newest technology really on the market. It's just crazy to see, thinking back 5-8 years ago, and when we were getting into some of the earlier RPOs, talking about 64 drop-ins and how well they actually drove, to now we're getting 67s and the bigger style chargers to do that exact same type of driving characteristics with less modifications.
That's right. And I do love that we had kind of touched on this earlier about how simple the build list for this was, what the recipe was to have an awesome daily driver that was capable of sled pulling, drag racing, and doing everything else. Oh, you're good, buddy. We want something that we could use at every event. We'll go a different way than you, hay wagon. Speaking of PowerStrokes out in the wild.
Good thing living in the sticks, right?
We wanted something that hey, you could throw your kid in the passenger seat, you could go to dinner in it, and then you also could take it out to a competition and have some fun with it. Chris, I think what we're going to do is up at this next stop sign, we'll switch seats. We'll let you kind of test some of the peak performance of this turbo out in the real world if you're into it.
But I like what you did there, though, Paul, is you had me test the performance of it. That way, if it breaks, be like, hey, man, it wasn't me.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
It wasn't me.
Yeah. No, we know the rules. Listen, I've had my chance to get out and play in this truck and lay into the throttle and see how it responds. I know exactly what I'm going to expect out of it. Chris, I think you've gotten a chance to drive this thing out in the real world and have a little bit of fun with it.
I've driven the thing a few times. Stock turbo, they were playing around with some of the tuning. I have some experience in the Fords in general. some of the newer stuff that we do in R&D over at the shop and whatnot. And gotta tell you, man, this thing clips.
I think I spent a lot of my early time around diesel performance hating on Fords, and for some well-deserved reasons. Let's be honest. I mean, 6 liters and 6.4s, pretty problematic flaws in their general design. Now, I've also met guys like J.D. Gleason who know how to build a 6.4 to be an absolute fucking monster. And we've met 6-liter guys like back in the day when Charlie Keeter was messing with them about, again, how to build a true competition truck with a 6-liter. It's entirely possible. We believe in that. What we've always had a problem with is kind of where our niche at like Duramax Tuner and Calibrated Power is, which is dealing with like daily driven, near stock trucks, guys who are just looking for that performance bump, as opposed to guys who are looking to build an all-out monster. Those are two very, very different situations. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing that in these late model 6.7 PowerStrokes, that there is a ton of potential to have a truly reliable, very fun to use, very fun to drive daily driver scenario.
No. It's one of those things where, again, it goes back to technology, technology advancing. It was a natural transition for us to get into these trucks just because of the similarities and some of the other things that we had practiced in the past.
Sure.
And there's no secret when it comes to the fuel system stuff in some of the earlier trucks. Those are probably, in the earlier Fords, I should say, those aren't really things that we had a ton of experience in, right? So it was easy to throw shade, but it's really, really hard to beat the Ford's potential power from the factory, not to mention when you spice things up a little bit. I mean, just toe in, I'm 40%, 35% throttle, just towing into the throttle, and we got up to 65, 70 in a hurry,
It's like nothing.
Very effortless. So, it's one of those things, good calibration support, good proper match to components, and when you throw a bigger turbocharger on there, right, those things are that much more important.
Well, yeah, and I think that was one of the other parts that came into this design was, while we do a lot of tuning, we know that there are a handful of guys out there who secretly maybe don't have the same equipment underneath the truck that we are used to dealing with, right? So we needed something that we knew was easy to tune, because we can't provide tunes for deleted trucks, and we don't necessarily want to be in the game to just spend all of our time telling other tuners what to do. We kind of respect other tuners, allow them to tune their own way, but we've all dealt with that turbo that you go to do an upgrade and then all of a sudden you have to go through 40 or 50 revisions with your tuner to really dial in that turbo and get the most out of that turbo, and that's a pain in the ass.
It is.
It's not fun.
It is also one of those things, I think it's a true testament of the product when you can get the truck, like we were at King of the Streets last year. The truck did back up a power number on a respectable dyno in the industry. It was able to prove itself under the course of a few events, and it was able to drive there and back. A lot of naysayers say that that's not possible when you have a truck with emissions.
Right.
So if we were able to do that within an emissions-on truck, and let's say you have modifications that we don't necessarily agree to, well, it's going to work in that application.
That's it.
So,
that's it. And it's easy to tune. Your everyday tuner who provides that style of tuning, they should not have a problem dialing in this turbo. This isn't going to be something that's wildly complicated for them to get the best results out of. Should be a pretty quick revision, if any is needed at all. You should just be able to go. And that's, I think when I think about upgrading my turbo, that's what I want. I mean, we realize because we've worked around this industry, that's not always what you're going to get. but that's what we want. We want to be able to bolt on a new upgraded part and it immediately work.
I think that's where the drop-in stuff has really taken the world by fire, right? Like, there's this ability to drop the turbo in. Let's say you need a turbocharger, right? Let's talk about a couple different customer personas.
Sure.
I'm a guy, I have a 17 Ford, my factory turbo failed and I need a replacement. I don't really care about power, but if I can get a little bit more airflow, a little bit better efficiency, cool, but I'm not chasing a power number. Well, a drop-in turbo, something like this would work because it's going to work with what you currently have in the truck.
That's right.
It wouldn't warrant a retune. It wouldn't warrant any updates that are needed. Now, let's say you're that guy where, hey, my truck's got 20,000 miles. This one's got 33,000. Hey, I have a 33,000 mile truck and I just want power.
Yeah.
I just want more. Well, then that's going to warrant a retune, of course. You do the turbo, you're going to need some tuning to turn up the fuel and to spice things up. Maybe some other supporting mods are going to be needed, like, an injector pump or a lift pump or whatever that case may be. So the versatility is such a big attribute when it comes to some of these parts, because some of these parts will work on a lot of different applications, and this is one of those parts, being the turbo.
That's right. Yeah, turbos currently are on the shelf ready to ship, which I know is something that's harder and harder to say here in the year 2022.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a part that, you know, you can order today, it could ship tomorrow, and you could be installing it over the weekend. The install on these, it's not an entry level. It's not as simple as doing an oil change. We'll be honest with you about that. But if you've ever swapped a turbo, you could do this one.
Right.
That is probably the safest thing that I could say about it. The 15 to 17s are a little bit different. 15, 16s are a little bit different than the 17 to 19 models. That's okay. We have two separate SKUs. The 15, 16s come with a pedestal that you'll need to be able to mount this onto your charger or mount this onto your engine with no other install parts needed. So everything else is going to be fairly stock. I think there's maybe a coolant line that comes in the package as well. But it's all very, very simple stuff. Very easy to use. Very easy to understand. Yeah, this has been one of the home runs that I really think back. Chris, you and I have been around the company for almost a decade. We've seen all of the turbo launches, I think, between us.
Yes.
We've been here for every one of them. We know that sometimes turbos come out and we know, hey, that early model might get some revisions down the road. It might get some updates as we go along, and that's fine. This is one of those that I think I feel really confident that people are going to put it on their truck, and we're going to get nothing but positive feedback. And that's what we've seen early on, as the guys who have jumped on this, some of the dealers who have helped us with some of the testing and things like that for real-world application. All of the feedback has been about, wow, I can't believe how easy this was to upgrade my turbo, because I just bolted my turbo on, and then I went and I drove my truck, and everything was great. And that's a big swing in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, we're really pumped. You know, this was a smart move, I feel, to get a nice in-cab driving shot of the turbocharger. We've been waiting for this one for a long time. It's something that we take a lot of pride in over at Calibrated, you know, as we're getting into more turbo development and things like that. And I got to tell you guys, you know, if anyone has a 6.7 PowerStroke and you're in the market for a charger and you have questions, give a call over to the shop, 815-568-7920. Any of the guys over there, including myself, will be more than happy to help. But like Paul said, we have them readily available, and we're really excited to see what the future brings on this platform.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Paul Wilson.
And I'm Chris Emke.
Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, I'm Jeremy Garnett. I'm here to do the Super Tech segment of the Diesel Performance Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about this 2018 L5P behind me. This big monstrosity of a truck that I'm going to be working on. So let's dig into it. So the customer drove this truck in from California. He brought it to us because he obviously had put this big, huge lift in it, and he wants a little bit more power behind it. So we are going to be installing one of our Stealth turbos. We're going to do a Stealth 64 on it, and then we're also going to do a new set of up pipes on it to give them a little bit more airflow. While I have it apart, I'm going to be taking the pedestal apart, and I'm going to actually be grinding out the pedestal to match the gasket for the turbo, so it actually won't have no deadhead, and it'll have a little bit more airflow. And then I'm actually going to match the gaskets on the up pipes as well. Some of the reasons why this guy wants to upgrade his turbo is you can see how big the truck is. He's running, you know, big 40-inch tires on it. He does live over in the mountains area of California, so he just wants to have a little bit more air to push this truck up through the mountains and stuff like that. And then also we're going to be doing the up pipes so we can keep his EGTs down a little bit. So his EGTs are getting a little bit high when he tows his camper, especially having big 40-inch tires and then a big camper on it. With the turbo that we're going to put on it, it won't be so big, so it won't be surge prone, so you'll get drivability. With the up pipes, he'll be able to EGT control on it to be able to push this truck up through the mountains a little bit. The difference between this truck here and then most L5Ps that come in is it's obviously 10, 12 inches higher than normal. As you can see, my head is at the hood level of this truck, so a little bit harder to work on because it is so high, but it is a fully emissions equipped truck, so I still have all the challenges of the emission system, EGR, all that stuff. And then anybody that has been reading blogs or watching anything to do with L5Ps, The up pipe bolts are prone to breaking on this truck, so that's another challenge that we had to overcome. So I had two broken bolts in the pedestal, and I had one broken bolt in the manifold. Luckily enough, I was able to get the bolt out of the manifold where I wasn't having to replace the manifold like I have on other trucks. So those are some of the challenges and things on this truck that I overcame. So tools on this truck is you need a really good swivel socket, like 1/4 inch stuff, 1/4 inch swivel socket. 1/4 inch tools are your best friend on this tool, or on this job, because of how tight the coolant drain and the coolant feed are to the side of the turbo, where you can't get in there without anything but a 1/4 inch. Pro tip is take your time, because the valleys on these trucks are deep. If things drop, they're almost like, it's like a black hole. So take your time, and the job will actually go through pretty easy. And then anti-seize. Make sure you use anti-seize when you put things together, especially on the bolts for the turbo. So take your time, and anti-seize is your best friend on this job.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.